If you've ever played video games, you are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've never played video games, then this one is going to be a little bit harder to understand. But this, in my opinion, is just such a perfect analogy that I cannot help but making it. In games, you have a minimap, at least in some games. In the games where you have a minimap, you have a minimap. Now this map is like a little, like the name says, a mini map at the top of your screen. And it shows you where you are, and perhaps more importantly, it shows you where you are going. And so whenever you have a quest, your minimap is like, look, this is exactly the direction you need to be going, go this way. Which is incredibly useful. But this is also the problem. The minimap is so useful, and it is so good at telling you where you should be going, that a lot of the time you end up focusing on the minimap instead of focusing on the actual game. It sort of takes the immersion out of the game. Instead of watching the game, you are just staring at your minimap, chasing a question mark or walking across a dotted line. For example, you reach a crossroads in the game. Now normally, if this would be like a real life medieval adventure, this would be very exciting because you would be like, where do I go? You start to look at the roads, you start to look for the signs, you start to look for whatever. But in a video game, it's not like that at all. You barely even watch at the crossroads. You barely even watch at the details. You don't even look for the signs. You just stare at your minimap while you rush through that game. I have played The Witcher 3 4 times in my life. Now all of this was a while ago, but I've played it 4 times. And the 4th time that I played this game, so I had already played this game 3 times before, from start to finish. Well, 1 time not from start to finish, but pretty much from start to finish 3 times. The 4th time, I decided to play this game without a minimap. Because I saw this video on YouTube and this guy said, hey, if you turn off the minimap, then you are much more immersed into the game. Give it a try. I thought, I'm gonna give it a try. And Jesus fucking Christ, guys. It was as if I played this game for the first time. I remember when I entered this main city in the game. And again, I've played this game 3 times before, and so throughout all of those 3 times, I've probably entered that city like 100 times, if not more. It was as if I had never seen that city before. I noticed all of the details, the layout, the character. Like, I was so much more immersed into that city than I have ever been before. It was just completely uncomparable. I never quite realized this, but all of the previous times that I was playing this game, I constantly looked at my minimap while I was running through that city. And I thought that I was watching the city because you are sort of multitasking, right? Your eyes sort of go from game, minimap, game, minimap, game, minimap. And so you think, you tell yourself that you are seeing the city. That's what you think. But then when you turn off the minimap, you start to realize that when you are multitasking, you are not paying attention at all. Right? As soon as you turn off that minimap, you stop multitasking. The immersion you have into the game, it is just ridiculous. It is completely uncomparable. And yes, to some extent, this was inconvenient at times because I would get lost. The minimap has its use. You see where you're going. I would have plenty of times where I would just get lost and I would have to open up the real map, the larger map, and then I would look on my map and then I was like, okay, so I need to walk in this direction, then I need to take the first road to the right and then the second to the left. And then I would try to do it, but I would take a wrong turn and I would get lost again. I would have to open up the map again, etc. But it was so worth it. Because this is the thing we tend to forget. We think that rushing through the game makes everything better, but it really doesn't. It is so much more fun to get lost in a game that you are actually immersed in than to rush through a game that feels empty. And this made me think about life. We are sort of doing the same thing in real life with our fucking smartphones. Whenever you are visiting a city, let's for example say Paris, you see all the tourists just like looking up directions on their phone, going from point A to point B. Just like they are playing a video game and they're rushing up to their quest giver. But instead of a quest giver, it's now the Eiffel Tower. And then they've reached the Eiffel Tower and then they're like, oh cool, so this is the Eiffel Tower. they look for the new directions, they start rushing towards the new quest again, which is like the Louvre or something. Whenever something exciting happens, instead of watching it with your own eyes, people take out their phones and they start filming it. Or whenever you are at a party and you're having this talk with friends about something that happened or just this fun fact, you take out your phone, you start looking up the fun fact, what the real fact was. You know, you start to fact check the thing instead of actually being immersed in the conversation with your friends. There is always that something that takes our focus away from real life, that takes our immersion out of the real world, and that puts our focus into our Minimap, our phone. And we think this is very useful because we think, well, if we know the directions, well, that's great, right? That speeds things up. Yes, this is useful to some extent, but we tend to forget that the best moments, the best experiences we have when we are visiting another city are these moments where we do not know where we are going for 10 minutes. And we have to spend an extra 10 minutes walking a different, slightly less effective direction. But we see all these cool little alleys. And we get to see the actual locals living their daily lives instead of just the tourist attractions. We think that whenever something interesting happens, that we want to capture the memory. But we forget that if we actually watch that experience ourselves with our own eyes instead of through a lens, and we are actually immersed in the actual experience, that experience impacts us so much deeper than whenever we film it and we watch it back 1 year later. We think that facts are great, that facts improve our lives, but we tend to forget that when we are having that discussion with our friends, the time where we were like uncertain and we were just laughing around and speculating about what exactly happened, and this one friend says, ha ha ha, so this happened, and the other friend says, no, I'm pretty sure you did that thing and then that happened. That is so much more fun than whenever that one friend pops up his phone and looks up the actual facts and is like, oh no guys, no, so this is what actually happened. And this is the big mistake we are making. Now, I am not necessarily trying to say that we should never check directions again. Obviously, directions can be very useful. Sometimes there are things that you do want to film. Sometimes there are facts that you do want to check. But my point is, we are making the mistake of thinking that always going faster is better, that always knowing more is better, and it simply is not. A lot of the time, when you actually turn off that minimap, whether that be in-game, turning off your minimap, or turning off your minimap in real life, and then I mean putting away your phone, and actually allowing yourself to not exactly know all the directions, but just wander around a new city through the alleys and really experience the city. Allow yourself to have a conversation with your friends without always knowing exactly what the facts are. Allow yourself to just fucking see something happening without constantly wanting to film it, and you will realize that your life is so much more fun that way than when you constantly try to go faster. Because it is better to get lost in a world that you are actually immersed in than to rush through a world that feels empty.